Welcome back, dear viewers. Our story begins with John, our buddy who recently moved to a new city to begin studying the college of his choice. He was incredibly motivated and excited to take that step in his life. Sadly, poor John was unaware of what would happen to him. John, throughout his life, he used to go for a night walk on the street while listening to music. However, he was unaware that the new city does not accept his habit. John's first week at the college went well, and he was really driven to study and was impressed with the college. Additionally, John didn't go for any night walks this week because he was really busy throughout his first week. And by the beginning of the second week, John had already begun returning to his routine and his habits. He adapted to it. He was so excited to take that step when he decided to go for a night walk back on the weekend. John asked his new friend, who he knew from college, to come along, but the guy said he was tired and wanted to go to bed. However, he made the decision to prepare for his first night walk in the new city. After putting on his headphones, he left this house and began walking. While John was still getting to know the new city, he came across a dark road. He wasn't sure where this road would lead, so he unfortunately decided to walk down it. John felt something strange when he started walking down that road, but he ignored it and carried on walking while listening to his favorite music. He was wearing headphones, but after a few minutes, he began to hear strange noises that were louder than his music. John switched off the music to try to identify the weird sounds he was hearing. The oddest part is that, as soon as he switches off the music, all of the sounds disappear. Even though he started to feel a little scared now, he tried not to pay attention to the noises and continued to walk. John ignored these sounds until the worst happened. He began to sense that someone was following him. He looks back after every few steps, but he doesn't see anyone. He turned off the music and took off his headphones as he began to feel quite afraid and worried. He continued to walk until he heard very loud footsteps. John started sprinting back home as soon as he sensed that footsteps were coming towards him, but he had already gone far enough from home. He stopped to catch his breath when he got tired of sprinting. For a little while, he felt calm as every sound, including the sound of footsteps, vanished. But then something unexpected happened. His shoulder was touched by a pair of fingers. It was really rough and hard. John threw himself to the ground and looked behind him, but there was nobody there. He was nearly dead from fear. But he stood up and continued walking home without pausing to look back, not even for a moment. He locked himself in his room. He tried to fall asleep, but he was unable to do so. He was trembling uncontrollably and was extremely frightened. He decided to tell his friend what had happened by phone. His friend gave him a shocked response saying, "Damn, did you really cross the night's road?" And now, my dear viewers, John's friend gives the full story. He informed him that 5 years earlier, there had been a murder on that road, and nobody ever walks down that way. 3 years ago, only one man accomplished it, and as of right now, nobody knows anything about him. He has vanished. When John heard that, he became even more afraid and started to wonder, what would happen if I continued walking? However, he was very thankful that he made it home safe. He thought about it all night long, and he made the decision that it would be his last night walking alone. Our story begins with Jack and David, two friends who lived together in the same house. They enjoyed walks at night in different locations so much. They had no idea that one day their walks at night would become their worst nightmare. Jack and David used to go out on the weekends while they worked together at the same office. Now that their work week is over, they can enjoy the weekend. They decided to take a night walk through a forest because they wanted to experience something different from walking across mountains and highways. They enjoyed taking walks at night and seeing nature at its finest. They spotted a forest that caught their eye when they opened Google Maps, but it was without a name, and sadly, that's what they decided. And straight away, they went to get ready for their night walk. They prepared and got into their car because they were far from the forest. However, they had arrived in that forest. Jack grabbed the flashlight because it was so dark. David, who was a little frightened, suggested Jack return, but Jack was obsessed by the trip and asked him to stop acting like a damn child. They walked through the forest, hearing sounds they couldn't identify, including a strong wind. David was a little afraid as they continued to walk, but Jack was enjoying it so much. They heard the sound of wood cracking and stopped suddenly. David begged to go back, but they were already quite far. Jack was having fun and didn't give a damn. As they continued their conversation, they stopped again, and they heard many footsteps all around them. David became horrified and repeatedly whispered to Jack, "Let's get back." Now Jack got scared as well and decided to leave. They walked carefully at first to avoid drawing attention, then walked back to the car. They noticed as they continued to walk back that the footsteps had stopped. They became calmer and continued to walk. Suddenly, David's leg faltered and he fell to the ground. Jack checked his leg with the flashlight and found him injured. He took a cloth out of the bag, tied it around his leg, and shut it. They heard the footsteps again when David was on the ground, but this time they were quite close. They were both so scared that they stayed on the ground, turned off the flashlight, and waited for the footsteps to vanish. Unexpectedly, the worst happened. David was pulled off his leg by someone. He began to scream. They were unable to identify the man because it was so dark. Jack turned on the flashlight again. To their disbelief, nobody was there. They were stunned for a minute of silence, not understanding how there could be no one. David was dragged 2 meters or so away. It was unexpected that there wasn't someone there. David got back on his feet. Despite having an injured leg, they immediately began to run away from that damn haunted forest. Even though David had tired out, Jack was catching up to him and was only trying to reach the car. They finally get to their car. They rushed inside and left the forest behind. They were both shaking and horrified when they got home. David kept saying, "I felt his rough damn hands pulling me away," while they exchanged questions about how there was no body. Jack made an effort to ease David, and they went to the police station the following day to report what had happened to them. However, the police were unable to assist them, stating that since the forest had been abandoned for many years, it was strange that they had entered it at midnight. So, David and Jack returned home in an attempt to ignore what had happened, after being unable to explain it. However, they both concurred that it was a malevolent spirit. That day was something they would always remember. It was a nightmare for them both. Our story begins with Kevin. He is an ex-police officer living a very normal life, living alone and without any responsibilities. He acts whenever and however he pleases. He was also exercising for a considerable amount of time. Kevin made the decision to spend a few days in a different city one day. He called his friend, but he didn't have time for that vacation because he was still working at the police station. Kevin made the decision to prepare. He packed his stuff and turned to leave. Although Kevin had to travel around 8 hours to get to the city he had selected for his holiday, he thoroughly enjoyed the long drives. Then he drove his car at night to begin his journey, enjoying the night cruise to the fullest while staying up late with coffee and music. Kevin chose to stop at a patrol station to take a break from driving after about 2 hours of travel. Without realizing it, he slept out while the music was still playing. Waking up to a loud knock on his car window, Kevin has his own handgun on his side. He sprang for his gun without hesitating to see through the car window who it might be. Thankfully, he was a policeman inquiring about his well-being. With a rush of adrenaline, Kevin awoke and resumed his night ride to the new city. While he continued to drive while keeping his eyes open with music, Kevin had a sense that a van had been following him since he left the gas station. However, Kevin continued to drive over, and it would still take him nearly 4 hours to get there. He decided to have another coffee at the rest area he found. He pulled over, got inside, and started drinking his coffee when all of a sudden, he realized the van was at the end of the rest area. As he saw a man get out of the van and enter a rest area, Kevin began to wonder why the van had stopped here again with me. He attempted to identify the man, but he was wearing a cap. However, Kevin returned to his car after finishing his coffee. Shortly after, he discovered that van was after him once more. Kevin turned off the music now and brought the gun up closer. He continued to drive until, all of a sudden, he noticed that the van was coming towards him on the road quite quickly. Kevin began speeding by the car incomprehensibly as well. He made the decision to call his friend, who is a police officer, and let him know what was going on with him. His friend gave him the worst advice. He told him to let the van pass away. Kevin followed his advice and began to drive gently, staring back in expectation of seeing who was inside the van and letting them pass away. The worst occurred as the van passed close to Kevin and right up to him. Kevin looked inside to see who was there. Unexpectedly, he discovered a man pointing a gun at him. The man attempted to shoot Kevin. Thankfully, he messed up his shot. Kevin sped up in an attempt to get away from those insane people. Despite everything, his police officer friend didn't hang up. Kevin yelled at him, telling him he needed help. His friend had already called the closest police station, and cops were dispatched to that particular road. Kevin is speeding along, and the van is after him. Kevin pulled out his gun and opened fire on the van, firing repeatedly between Kevin and the van. Kevin's shot ended up in the van's wheels, which was lucky for him, and at last the van had to stop. Kevin stopped a short distance away from them. He was attempting to figure out who the hell those people were. Fortunately, he heard the police siren approaching. Kevin began chasing after the guys once the cops caught them in order to find out who these damn people were. Kevin stared in shock as he realized the van's driver was a member of a drug-dealing gang. He arrested him. Before his retirement from the police station 7 years ago, after getting out of prison, he was spying on Kevin in order to get revenge. The police returned him to his rightful spot in the jail. Kevin was pleased that the criminal had been brought back to justice. He arrived in the city safely, had a great few days, and returned to his regular life. Thank you for joining us on these tales through the dark. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more scary stories that will keep you up at night.